My name is Gloria Frizzell, and I'm 30 years old. If you ask my friends to describe me, they'd probably say I'm predictable. I'm a logistics manager. I make sure things get where they're supposed to go, when they're supposed to get there. I build systems. I find weak points, and I fix them. That's probably why I noticed the cracks in my relationship long before it broke apart. My boyfriend Leslie, 29, used to say my mind was like a spreadsheet, everything calculated, color-coded, controlled. I thought he meant it as a compliment. Looking back, maybe it was a warning. We'd been together for 4 years, living in my condo for 2. I paid the mortgage. He covered half the utilities and groceries. Or so I thought. Then things started to change. The late nights, the vague client dinners, the new designer watch, and the cologne that smelled suspiciously expensive. All supposedly work perks from his career-changing opportunity. Leslie worked in marketing. His boss, Grace 45, had recently discovered his potential. Suddenly, there were strategy sessions on weekends, team-building retreats, and emergency client calls that always seemed to happen right around dinner. Whenever I questioned it, Leslie would smile that patronizing, pitying smile and say, "Babe, this is what success looks like. You just wouldn't understand. You like routine." He was right about one thing. I like order, which is probably why the night everything fell apart, I didn't scream. I just watched the pattern unfold. That Tuesday evening, Leslie was getting ready. Fresh shirt, that new cologne again. He looked in the mirror and said, "Big dinner. Grace wants to go over campaign details. Don't wait up." He kissed my cheek. It felt like a paper cut. 7:05. He left. 7:06. My phone buzzed. "Leslie." "Don't freak out. Going to dinner with my boss. Just us. Big project. Behave." My eyes lingered on that winking emoji. Not the words, the arrogance. I put the phone down and opened the shared tablet on the coffee table. We used it for movies and takeout orders, but Leslie had logged into his personal email there a few weeks back and never logged out. I wasn't snooping. I was searching for a recipe, but the inbox was open, and what I saw wasn't a recipe for anything except destruction. Email chains, forwarded expense reports, dozens of them. Subject line, expense approval, client dinner, Grace's name, Leslie's name, restaurant receipts, hotel stays, luxury stores. And every note from Grace had that same intimate undertone. "Happy to help, superstar. See you tonight." And his reply, "You're the best, G. Can't wait." I scrolled and scrolled, watching my stomach turn to stone. The Vineyard Hotel, $2,200. Team retreat for 2. The spa treatments. The trench coat she'd once called a client gift. Every line item was a lie he'd dressed in business terms. Every receipt was proof that I'd been funding their fantasy while cooking dinner alone. But my blood didn't boil. It cooled. This wasn't heartbreak. It was a logistics problem. The system our relationship was compromised. And the weak point wasn't just him, it was my trust. So I did what I do best. I documented everything. Every email, every receipt, every red heart. By the time Leslie came home that night, tipsy and humming, I already had a secure folder full of evidence. He kissed my forehead and said, "You're so quiet tonight, babe." I smiled back, just thinking. Because I was. Not about him, about the system failure and how I was going to correct it. The next morning, Leslie left early for work, or whatever he called it now. I watched him go sipping coffee from the mug he'd once given me on our 2nd anniversary. It said "best teammate ever." The irony wasn't lost on me. Once the door shut, I turned back to the tablet. I wasn't crying, I was planning. Each email chain I saved told a bigger story, not just infidelity, but theft. Client dinner, team building strategy retreat, all covered by Grace's digital signature of approval. They weren't just lovers, they were partners in fraud. Grace was married to David, a partner at one of the most feared family law firms downtown, the kind that turned divorce into warfare. And as luck would have it, David specialized in corporate misconduct. The poetic symmetry made me almost smile. For the next 2 weeks, I became the perfect girlfriend. I made Leslie's favorite meals. I listened to him complain about deadlines. I even massaged his shoulders when he came home stressed. Every move was deliberate, every word rehearsed. He thought he was keeping a secret. He didn't realize I was building a case. By the second Friday, I had everything: expense records, emails, and a screenshot of Grace's company ID tag next to one of the receipts. I even noted timestamps on Leslie's Uber rides that matched the hotel check-ins. All neat, all organized, all lethal. The plan was simple: expose the fraud to HR, Make sure David Grace's husband saw the evidence first. Watch the system collapse under its own weight. I waited for the right night. Tuesday, 7:00 p.m. Leslie was getting ready again. Same cologne, same tie he wore for important meetings. Grace wants to talk about the campaign projections, he said, checking his reflection. We'll probably grab dinner after. Don't wait up, okay? I leaned against the doorframe watching him. You always say that. He chuckled, not even looking at me. Because you always do. 7:05 p.m. He left. 7:06, my phone buzzed. Leslie. Don't freak out. Dinner with Grace. Big project. Be good. That was the green light. I opened my laptop and created a new anonymous email account. Subject line, urgent. Expense report fraud and misuse of funds. Body, to whom it may concern. This is a concerned employee. Grace, last name, has been using company funds to finance an affair with her subordinate, Leslie, last name. The fraudulent expenses include hotel stays, spa treatments, and luxury gifts disguised as client-related costs. Attached are a few examples for your review. I suggest an immediate audit. Anonymous. Then I attach 10 of the most incriminating screenshots. Click Send. 7:10 p.m. Phase 2. I open the Uber app. Pickup Les Fantômes Restaurant. Destination David. Last name Law Offices Financial Plaza. I sent Leslie a text. Change of plans. Your ride's here. Then I blocked his number. I sat back, turned on the TV, and waited. Not out of curiosity, but out of precision. 7:43 p.m. No caller ID. I answered. Who is this? A man's voice whispered. Depends. Who's asking? This is Leslie's boss, Grace. What did you do? She sounded like she was hiding in a closet. You sent Leslie to David's office. He's there, in the lobby. David saw him on the security feed. He's screaming. What did you do? Her voice cracked on the last word. I could almost hear the chaos in the background phones ringing, footsteps, muffled shouting. I smiled. Sounds like a logistics issue, Grace. Wrong delivery address. This isn't funny. You have to stop this. Stop it! I cut her off, my tone soft but razor sharp. You and Leslie thought you were clever. Billing your company for your affair. Forwarding the receipts to his personal email. I didn't have to dig you two practically gift-wrapped the evidence. Silence, then a sob. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said. You thought I was predictable. You thought I'd just cry and move on. But I planned for errors. And this one I paused. This one's fatal. Click, I hung up. Then I turned the TV volume up just enough to drown out the quiet. No tears, no laughter, just stillness. For the first time in months, I felt calm, efficient. The system had failed. Now I was rebuilding it. It's funny, when you destroy a system, you expect silence. But silence never lasts. 72 hours after that, Uber, the pounding started. Not polite knocking, not pleading, pounding. Like the end of the world was at my front door. Gloria, open this damn door. You psycho, open it right now. Leslie's voice raw and desperate. I muted the TV and sat perfectly still on my couch. The chain was on. The lock was double bolted. I wasn't afraid, just tired. You think this is funny? You ruined my life, he shouted. Grace is gone. She got fired, and me. They suspended me. They're saying there's an investigation. I didn't answer. I'm calling the police. I'll tell them you assaulted me. That made me smile. Quietly, I reached for my phone and started recording. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers showed up. Blue and red lights painted the hallway walls through my blinds. I opened the door just the width of the chain. Officer 1. Ma'am, we received a call from this man. He says you've locked him out of his apartment. Me. Good evening, officers. This is my condo. He doesn't pay rent. He isn't on the mortgage. We had a breakup, and he's been shouting threats for 20 minutes. I have a recording. I held up my phone. Leslie froze when he saw it. Leslie. She's lying. She tricked me. She sent me to my boss's husband. Officer 2. Sir, that sounds like a personal matter. If this is a domestic dispute, you'll need to handle it civilly. I could see the fight drain out of him. The confident marketer, the fast-track superstar, reduced to a trembling mess on my welcome mat. Me. I'm happy to arrange a time for him to pick up his belongings with a civil standby present, but right now, I don't feel safe letting him in. The officers exchanged a look. Officer 1. Sir, you need to leave for tonight. You can contact her to retrieve your property later. Leslie's jaw tightened. He looked at me like I was the monster. Then he turned, muttered something under his breath, and stormed off into the night. The silence that followed was heavy, not peaceful, but final. The next morning, the phone rang. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. Gloria, thank heavens. This is Barbara Leslie's mother. Good morning, Barbara. He's here, and he's an absolute wreck. I think you owe him an apology. I almost laughed. An apology for what? For this, she snapped. You embarrassed him in front of his colleagues. You humiliated him. You got Grace fired. Do you know how hard she worked for him? Barbara, I said quietly. Grace was his married boss. They were committing fraud. Fraud. Don't be ridiculous. Grace was mentoring him. Leslie is ambitious. You were just threatened. Threatened, I repeated. No, Barbara. I was disrespected. There's a difference. Her voice turned cold. You've ruined his career out of jealousy. You've always been controlling. And he's always been careless, I said evenly. Maybe next time he'll learn to log out of his email. There was a pause, long and sharp. Then she hissed, You'll be hearing from our lawyer. Click. I stared at the phone and exhaled slowly. The truth is I didn't feel victorious. Just done. Completely, utterly done. By evening, I'd packed his things. 14 boxes, 8 trash bags, every shirt folded, every shoe paired, every trace of him removed from my life like expired inventory. When I taped the last box shut, I whispered to myself, shipment complete. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the couch, and looked at the empty corner where his sneakers used to sit. I thought I'd feel lonely, but instead I felt something better. Efficient. The system was stabilizing again. Saturday, noon. The day Leslie was supposed to collect his things, the day I'd been quietly counting down to all week. The doorbell buzzed right on time. When I looked through the camera feed, my stomach didn't even twist. I'd already predicted this. Leslie, his mother Barbara, and his father Franklin, a man who had always looked at me like I was a defective appliance, were standing there with grim determination. And just behind them, an officer from the local precinct, Officer Miller, the civil standby. The law's polite way of saying we're here to make sure nobody throws punches. I opened the door halfway. Come in, I said flatly. Boxes are ready. The sight that greeted them was surgical 14 boxes stacked neatly in rows labeled by category clothes, tech shoes, bathroom. Miscellaneous. Every label written in my clean black marker handwriting. Officer Miller gave me an approving nod. Looks organized. Of course it does, I replied, and he smirked just a little. Barbara stepped in first, her perfume arriving before she did. She took one sweeping glance at the boxes and clicked her tongue. This is it. Where's his high-speed blender, his mirror, his laptop? The blender's in box 7, I said calmly, and the antique mirror came from Home Goods 2 years ago. It's in fragile. She blinked. Home Goods? Check the label on the back. Clearance tag's probably still there. Franklin made a sound halfway between a grunt and a laugh, but Barbara cut him off with a glare. Leslie stood in the doorway, face pale and drawn, saying nothing. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. His hair was messy, eyes bloodshot, the polished golden boy stripped down to bare nerves. You think you're a big woman now, huh? Barbara hissed suddenly. Ruining my son's life for attention. Officer Miller cleared his throat. Ma'am, please. We're not doing arguments today. I folded my arms, expression steady. I didn't ruin his life. He did that himself. He made a mistake, she said sharply. People make mistakes. Fraud isn't a mistake, I said quietly. It's a decision. And multiple receipts prove he made it over and over again. Her face went red. Franklin looked away, shame flickering across his expression for the first time. The three of them began moving boxes one by one under the officer's silent watch. Leslie stayed quiet until the last few minutes, when he suddenly stopped frozen halfway through picking up a box labeled Office. His eyes darted around the room. Where's my work laptop? I didn't look up from my notebook. In the black backpack. Right there. No, he snapped. Not that one, my work laptop. It was here. I looked straight at him. You mean the one that belongs to your company? The one you used to send Grace those expense reports. I'm guessing it's back at HR now. You stole it! His voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. You used it to get those emails. I raised an eyebrow. You really don't remember, do you? You forwarded all that evidence yourself. From your work account to your personal email, the one still logged in on our shared tablet. Barbara froze. Franklin turned toward his son, slowly, realization dawning like a storm. You did what he said, voice low. You forwarded them yourself. It was just for backup, Leslie stammered. Grace told me to. Franklin swore under his breath loud enough for everyone to hear. Barbara's face turned white. We are not doing this here, she snapped, voice shaking. Get the boxes, Leslie. Now. He obeyed. One by one, they carried everything out. The officer waited until the last load disappeared into the hallway. At the door, Leslie turned back to face me, eyes rimmed red hands, trembling slightly. This isn't over, Gloria, he said hoarsely. You humiliated me. I'll get a lawyer. You'll pay for this. I smiled faintly. I'll budget for it. His jaw twitched. Barbara muttered something about ungrateful women, and Franklin just shook his head like he couldn't quite believe his son had become this person. When the door finally closed, Officer Miller exhaled. That was surprisingly calm. I like calm, I said. It's efficient. He gave me a look, half amused, half pitying, then tipped his hat and left. The silence afterward wasn't empty this time. It was full, heavy, final. I looked at the corner where the boxes had stood and whispered, "Shipment delivered." Then under my breath, "Inventory cleared." For the first time in months, my condo didn't feel haunted, just clean. 3 quiet days passed. For the first time in years, I woke up to silence. No alarm from Leslie's phone, no sound of his coffee grinder, no fake morning meetings, just the low hum of peace. I thought the storm was over. I should have known better. On Thursday afternoon, a thick white envelope slid under my door. The return address was a law office. For a second, I almost laughed Barbara had kept her promise. I sliced it open with my keys. Formal demand for compensation and damages. The letter accused me of malicious and intentional infliction of emotional distress, unlawful eviction, and violation of tenant rights. It demanded $10,000 for Leslie's emotional suffering, another $3,500 for lost and damaged property, including apparently a blender that now makes a weird noise. But the part that made me set my coffee down mid-sip was this. Our client also demands the immediate return of an art piece, Abstract Numéro 88B, which Ms. Frizzell has wrongfully retained. An art piece. I frowned in, turning toward my study. There it was, that massive, hideous, abstract painting Leslie had hung above my desk months ago. Swirls of red and gold that looked like someone had spilled soup on fire. He'd claimed he bought it at a gallery auction, bragged about how it was a conversation piece. I'd always thought it was ugly. I took it off the wall, turning it around to see if there was a sticker or tag, and there it was right in plain sight. Property of Grace's company. Executive Loan Program. Art, Member 088B. I stared at it for a full minute before bursting into laughter. Not bitter laughter, relieved. Like the universe had a sense of humor after all. The man's lawyer had just demanded the return of stolen corporate property. I set the painting gently on the floor, snapped 2 photos, one of the artwork, one of the metal tag, and opened my laptop. A new email. Sender anonymous reports at protonmail.com. Subject expense report. Fraud, additional evidence. To the HR department and Mr. David, last name. Thank you for your prompt action on the previous report. It has come to my attention that Leslie, last name, and Grace, last name, may also have company property in their possession, specifically an art piece from your executive loan program. Attached are photos of the item and its property tag. Please advise if and when it can be retrieved. Regards, a concerned party. Click send. 5 minutes later, I stood in the doorway of my study, looking at that ridiculous painting lying against the wall. Goodbye, masterpiece, I said softly. You were never mine anyway. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat by the window, and waited. Not for Leslie, not for justice. Just to see how long it would take for the next domino to fall. It didn't take long. The following afternoon, I got a polite call from a man introducing himself as a bonded art courier on behalf of Grace's company. He arranged to pick up the painting that same day. The man arrived wearing white gloves and treated that hideous thing like it was the Mona Lisa. When he left, my wall looked bare, but the air felt lighter. As the door closed behind him, I whispered, "And that concludes the return shipment." What I didn't realize then was that email had just detonated the final phase of this entire story. The art piece wasn't just company decor, it was evidence. And soon it would burn down everything Leslie and Grace still had left. The thing about a good plan is that once it's set in motion, you don't need to touch it again. It runs itself. By the end of that week, everything I'd set in motion was detonating. The first explosion came through whispers. A friend from Leslie's company. Someone who owed me a favor called, "Gloria, it's chaos here. Grace and Leslie are both under investigation. HR found inconsistencies in dozens of expense reports. David Grace's husband filed for divorce. Apparently, he brought in corporate lawyers from his firm. The company's talking about pressing charges. I thanked her and hung up, then stared at the bare wall where that ugly painting used to hang. It was gone less than 48 hours, and it had already started a fire. By Monday, I got another call, this time from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Frizzell. This is Natalie, paralegal for Mr. David, last name. Her voice was calm, professional, and terrifyingly efficient, the way only a divorce attorney's assistant can sound. We'd like to confirm that you were the person who arranged for the return of an art piece labeled Executive Loan Program number 088B. Yes, I said. Thank you for your honesty. The piece was valued at $22,000. Its disappearance constitutes grand larceny. Your cooperation has been documented. Grand larceny, I repeated softly. Indeed. Grace's company never authorized its removal from their offices. We'll be using this as part of both the divorce and the criminal case. If you're contacted by Leslie or anyone on his behalf, please refer them to us. She paused, her tone softening slightly. For what it's worth, Ms. Frizzell, that was a very smart thing you did. When she hung up, I realized I was shaking not from fear, but from release. Months of quiet anger had finally found an outlet. A few days later, another envelope arrived, this time from my lawyer. He'd seen the demand letter from Leslie's attorney and drafted a reply so sharp it could cut glass. Dear Counsel, we find your client's request for the return of stolen corporate property fascinating, given the attached photo evidence confirming the item was never lawfully obtained. Any further contact with my client will be regarded as harassment. Sincerely, Michael Grant, Escrow. I read the line 3 times and smiled. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was surviving a breakup. I felt like I'd completed a project. The next week, the updates came in waves. Grace fired. Publicly. Leslie terminated pending criminal investigation. David filed, both for divorce and restitution of all stolen assets. The company announced an internal audit and quietly thanked an anonymous source. I didn't need to guess who that was. I wasn't celebrating, not exactly. There were no fireworks in my living room, no triumphant music. Just quiet, a peace so profound it felt like air after a storm. But there was one moment I'll never forget. Standing by my kitchen window, watching the afternoon light hit the spot where the painting used to hang, I whispered to myself. Revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes it's paperwork. It wasn't rage that brought them down. It was precision. All I had done was show the truth in perfect order, like lining up dominoes and tapping the first one. The rest fell exactly where they were meant to. 2 months later, the world was quiet again. No letters, no pounding on the door, no messages from Barbara about second chances. The silence had shape, now heavy, peaceful, complete. I had almost started to forget the sound of Leslie's voice, until one night my phone rang. Unknown number, no caller ID. For a moment I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity, it's a stubborn thing. Hello. The voice that answered was wrecked, hoarse, shaky, stripped of all that smug confidence. Gloria, it's me. I didn't say anything. Please just hear me out. They're pressing charges. David's firm is working with my company's lawyers. Grace told them I gave her that painting as a gift, but now they're saying it was theft, that we falsified expense reports. They're calling it grand larceny. You have to help me. Help him! He was crying. I could hear it, the ragged sound of a man drowning in the mess he built. You have to tell them you made it up, he begged. Say you faked the emails that you framed us. Please, I'll pay you. $15,000. Just tell them I didn't know. For a long moment I said nothing. The only sound was his breathing, shallow, frantic, desperate. Then quietly I said, Leslie, do you remember what you used to call me? What? Predictable, I said. You used to laugh and say I was too organized, too calm, too boring. He didn't respond. You thought I'd never notice the lies. That I'd keep cooking dinner while you spent company money on hotel rooms. That I'd never fight back because I wasn't dramatic enough. I paused, my voice steady now, cold and clean. But you forgot something. Predictable people plan ahead. We keep records. We think through consequences. He started to sob. Please, Gloria, I'm begging you. You don't understand what they'll do to me. I understand perfectly, I cut in. You disrespected me. You disrespected your company. You disrespected your own life. And now you're finally facing the receipt. Silence. Goodbye, Leslie. Click. I blocked the number and set my phone face down on the table. No shaking, no guilt. Just the faint hum of my refrigerator and the city breathing outside my window. The fallout spread faster than even I predicted. Grace convicted of corporate fraud and embezzlement. Leslie charged as a co-conspirator, his reputation gone, his career incinerated. David divorced Grace and took her firm's severance payout as compensation. Barbara and Franklin mortified their golden boy, now a headline. I didn't gloat, I didn't post, I just lived. I sold the couch we'd bought together, painted the study wall a soft cream color, and hung a new painting, a quiet landscape I found at a small art fair. $200, signed by a local artist. I even kept the receipt. That night I poured a glass of wine and stood in front of it, the city lights reflecting in the glass. He wanted the fast track, I murmured to myself. He just didn't realize it was a one-way shipment. The air was still. My phone was silent. My system was stable again.